Welcome, everybody. This is GDG Dallas meetup for February 2021. I am one of your hosts, Luke Wallace, and here you can see the rest of the organizers of GDG Dallas. We have a couple of them on the call tonight. Feel free to reach out to any of us. If you ever have questions about GDG Dallas, you can contact us through Meetup or through the YouTube channel, or however. The Meetup site that you see there, meetup.com/GDG Dallas, is a great way to stay connected. If you're watching this video, that's a great place to go get connected and RSVP for future meetups. So that you can watch them live and participate and talk to our speakers and all that kind of stuff. We'll mention briefly our Zoom tonight is sponsored by Bottle Rocket, and it allows us to have several hundred people, I think, on the call. So don't be worried about if you'll be able to join live. There's plenty of room. Our main website is gdgdallas.com. Right now, that really just redirects to the Meetup site. We do have plans to kind of make that the one-stop shop where you can always go and learn more about GDG Dallas. There'll be things like the official GDG site over on the community.dev domain. GDG has, globally, GDG has set up that as their main website, and we are over there. We also have a Meetup site, just because we've got really good SEO over there already, and we have a lot of members. And so we're going to keep that as long as possible for people to use to stay connected to our community. We do have a Slack group. As you can imagine, it is also gdgdallas.slack.com, and we can get you an invite. We like to post those. If you have any problems getting onto the Slack and you'd like to be connected, just reach out. You can even reach out during this meetup if you'd like, and we will try to get you on there. It's a great way to just kind of keep in touch. We make little announcements over there. We do send those out through other means as well, through the Meetup channels, but it's a good way if you just want to have another community to connect with, or a way to connect with our community. We have a YouTube channel as well. So if you're watching this and you're wondering what other videos maybe are available, we've actually been recording them. It's a lot easier to do when everybody's virtual. And so we have quite a few meetups from the past year, or even a little further going back. So lots of different topics. Go in there, take a look. And there's a couple of socials that, of course, you can always follow. GDG Dallas on kind of all your favorite social networks, and we will be able to connect there. Again, we're kind of planning on getting more on gdgdallas.com. Speaking of speakers and speaking and places to speak at, we are also looking for speakers, as we always are. We love hearing from people who are in the community, like our speaker tonight, somebody in the local to us Dallas community, but we're open to having people speak from all over to our community. So we'd love to hear whatever it is you're working on, whatever you've been learning, either at your job or on the side, or anything that might be relevant to this group. We would love to hear from you and kind of go on your journey of learning, just as you go through it. So feel free to send or propose a talk. We actually have a form on the Meetup page. So yeah, whatever you're learning, feel free to submit your idea. We'd love to hear about it. And I'd say most of the time we just accept them as is. If you want any feedback or ideas, maybe you've got a concept, but you're not really sure which parts of it would make a good part of a presentation, feel free to submit that, and then we can help talk you through how to make great presentations. Several of the organizers have presented at GDG and have presented at much bigger conferences. We have some of our organizers have presented internationally at conferences, and so they would love to give you some feedback on how to craft a presentation, how to give one. So always looking to help. This is the requisite Bill Murray slide that I that I always love to have in there. It's really to turn it over to our community to know or to ask, do you know of any events going on? Is there another conference? Is there another meetup? Is there another, any sort of event going on? So I'll pause now, and if anybody'd like to say something, feel free to unmute and say it. Or if you are comfortable with that, say something in the chat.
So, hi, this is Tech Controller. I was wondering, like, before, are there like actual face-to-face meetings or something like that?
There definitely were. GG Dallas is actually a very long-running meetup group that had been meeting for nearly a decade before COVID, completely in person, very few online events. And we do plan to return to in-person events once it's safe to do so, and we have a venue that would allow people to meet. And so we're always interested in that, and that's definitely something we want to get back to.
Okay. Okay, great.
And yeah, keep an eye out for that on the meetup page, because that'll definitely be a big deal when we promote it, is like we're back in person and stuff. So probably not in March. April or May is still probably pretty iffy, but hopefully by the summer we'll be, depending on how things are going, like I'm hoping that by summertime.
Okay, great. Is it kind of like at I guess like in like a building or something per se, or is it kind of random, like the best place possible?
So we have a couple of venues we were using before COVID pretty regularly. One is the Bottle Rocket offices. Full disclosure, that's where I work. So it's much easier for me to organize an event in person at a place that I can get to very quickly. It's also in Addison, and so it's kind of centrally located. It's right off the tollway. There's another venue that we were using that was much closer to downtown. And so some of the meetups were happening there as well. So we had a couple of different places we would meet.
Okay, and this just last question, sir. This is just to pretty much familiarize ourselves, like you said earlier within the call, like sharing ideas and kind of like almost like working together per se or individually.
Yeah, it's really a learning community. It's a way for people to get together and learn about new topics. That's primarily our format, is people getting together and hearing about a topic for 30 to 45 minutes, somewhere in that time range, and then asking questions. And so the variety of topics means that you can either come to all the events and kind of learn different things, or like hear about different things, or you can just come to the ones, obviously you can just come to the ones that you're interested in, and just kind of whenever there's a web topic, maybe you come to the web meetups, but you don't really come to the Android based meetup. So it's really meant to be flexible. We have also had larger events on weekends. We've actually had some full kind of all day, well, not all day, but like, 9 or 10 to 3 or 4 in the afternoon. And they're kind of like all day learning sessions about a more narrow topic. And then we've now had 3, one virtual, 2 in-person dev fests, which is kind of like a little mini conference where there's lots of different sessions over the course of a day, and lunch is part of that. And there's, a ticket that you have to buy, and it's at a bigger venue. And so that's more of like a little mini tech conference that actually our meetup group hosts. So we do a kind of a variety of events.
Okay, wow, that's awesome. I definitely would like to attend, like continuously,
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
mm,
It's great to have you.
yes, sir.
Yeah, and thanks for asking like a really basic question. that I haven't answered in several meetups, because I always kind of feel like, well, it's always the same people showing up, and so I don't really need to explain what we do here. But it's like, this is actually great. So thank you so much for asking that. Probably I need to do a little bit more about that introduction about what we are a little more frequently. So thank you for asking the questions.
Welcome to the group.
Yeah, you're family now. So
Thanks.
if you're watching the YouTube video, like and subscribe, right? All that kind of good stuff. I think that's obligatory to say. So now we'll turn it over to our feature presentation from Jason Brewer. He's going to be speaking on Flutter and Lottie, an animation file format. Just to introduce Jason a little bit, he may want to do a deeper introduction, but he's a software engineer with over 25 years of experience in programming mobile and embedded systems. He's ported Java VMs and operating systems to the latest silicon chips and optimized web stacks, and now developing apps using the latest Apple and Google technologies. He currently manages cross-platform development at Bottle Rocket Studios. It's like he's a coworker of mine or something, focused on providing clients with new ways to bring ideas and solutions to market. Take it away, Jason.
Thank you, Luke. Thank you, everybody, for having me. I'm glad to be here. This is my first time at GDG Dallas. Hopefully not the last.
We'll see how it goes.
So I'm going to talk a little bit about Flutter and Lottie animations. I don't know how experienced the group is with Flutter. I'm just going to kind of give an overview. I will be showing some code. This is not going to be a coding presentation though, so I will have some pointers at the end to some online resources that you can actually go do a deeper dive into some material if you actually wanted to kind of develop the equivalent of what I show. So I want to talk a little bit about just cross-platform in general. We've done all kinds of cross-platform projects at Bottle Rocket, and generally our thinking historically has been that people eventually outgrow cross-platform. You know, if you have a successful app that grows very large, you eventually, the feature set grows beyond your needs, or you know, you just run into the typical issues that cross-platform development has. So we kind of have this view that you might do a 1.0 app in cross-platform and then eventually graduate to native. It remains to be seen whether that will be true for Flutter or not. Typically, cross-platform has been, for us, applications that combine a web solution and mobile. So you want an app that's running as a web page as well as on your mobile and kind of have a similar experience. But I think about Flutter a little differently in terms of being mobile cross-platform, and has been a very good solution for that, I think, and it's getting a lot of attention, and you know, the community around it and the solutions around it are growing very quickly. And I've been tracking it for about 2 years, kind of always as I do my hobby projects in Flutter, just because of it's an enjoyable language to program in, for one, and you know, it keeps me abreast of what's going on in there. And it's been the first cross-platform technology I've used that's enjoyable. Kind of the tools are there. It doesn't kind of get in your way. You don't feel like you're hacking something. You feel like you're doing mobile development. It's just an alternative mobile development, really. And I think the community seems to like that as well. If you kind of look at 2019 to 2020, this kind of just shows the growth of Flutter, kind of at the expense of all these other cross-platform technologies, typical the web ones like PhoneGraph, NativeScript, Xamarin. All of these have gone down in the last year. React is holding its own. React is still, I believe, a good solution if you need the web. So I'm really looking forward to Flutter Web, which is currently in beta, moving to production. We'll see how far away that is. The other great thing about Flutter right now is the community. It has now reached, this is just kind of a graph of growth of Flutter questions on Stack Overflow. Flutter's this green line here. And it kind of tracks, what you see with Swift several years ago on the iOS. And it's growing much, much quicker than React. And, I think in 2020, you started to see really any question you had, you could look up and start to find an answer. The platform is still growing pretty quickly and evolving. So, you still have the typical Stack Overflow challenge and maybe seeing three generations of different answers and trying to figure out which one is best. But you can almost always, find a solution pretty quickly for the main problems you're gonna run into. One of really the best thing about Flutter to me is the architecture and the implementation. So if you kind of typically look at how historically these web cross-platform solutions have worked, they've been JavaScript solutions that have leveraged the fact that there is a web stack on the mobile, and they've had a bridge to, in the case of React, OEM widgets or the platform windows or widgets or UI elements that are available in iOS or Android. Whereas Flutter is different. Flutter actually is native on the UI all the way to the screen. So you have a single code base all the way to the screen, including the Flutter platform. Now that's kind of one thing that people don't realize, I think. On, say, React, you have a single code base for your app in JavaScript, but then the fact that it bridges to native components means you actually have a different implementation between Android and iOS for your UI. Whereas Flutter, you have a single code base because it is the same UI code on Android and iOS. Now you do still have a bridge to the physical peripherals and native APIs, and there's third-party packages you'll pull in that will have those bridges as well. But in my experience, I think this is the main difference that gives it a stability and a consistency across platforms that I have not seen before and other cross-platform technologies. So the ease of maintenance is there, and you don't see a lot of different behaviors across devices. So for instance, if you look at, I don't know, I come from an iOS background, so I think about in terms of an iOS 6 alert box is going to look different than an iOS 10 alert box, and a React application, that alert's going to look different, whereas in Flutter, it's going to look the same, regardless of which version of the platform you're running on. My experience, we've recently done a Flutter project, and we did not see a lot of those typical issues you see when QA tests on older devices versus newer devices. Yeah, David, you have a question?
Yeah, I was wondering, because I don't know if this has changed or not. Back in the days of the big Android barbecue, I was able to corner chat one time because of these, cross platforms. And I said about the performance when you have that bridge, how does that affect it, using the native app like on an Android side? And they said, yeah, there was a performance problem with that bridge and the screen painting and all this. And I was just wondering, like, you're more at the low level thing. Do you know or have experienced any of that with that bridge?
I had a performance slide in here that I didn't show because I was like, I don't have the reference in there. I shouldn't show that. But you can find some good performance studies recently, and I will. I can see at the end. I can see if I can post them in the chat. There is a good article that shows Flutter performance on, let's say, processing intensive algorithms is on par with native, whereas React is up to 10 to 20 times slower. Now UI tests, that is not necessarily the case, so you can do UI tests and You will see React at 60 frames a second. You'll see Flutter at 60 frames a second. But the interesting detail is you will see Flutter running at, say, 30% of the CPU and React running closer to 80 to 90%. So the performance is there for the user, but it is taking a lot more of the processor. So it's going to run the battery down quicker. And these are, constructed tests. So you could argue whether these are real world situations or not. There are certainly lots of large companies using React and making successful apps with it. So I think generally from a UI perspective, it's really going to depend on your implementation. How well of an implementation did you do? How intelligent are you being about fetching resources from the network and that type of thing? So regardless of the platform, you're still, smart developers can write good code and poor developers can write bad code on both platforms. So I think we had a bake-off at Bottle Rocket between platforms a year or so ago, and we had a big React proponent and I was a big Flutter proponent, so we kind of swapped. He took Flutter and I took React, and we both came away impressed. Actually, React was better than I expected, and he enjoyed Flutter. So I think I do respect the React solution. I think it's the best out of the web cross-platform solution. So I don't want to diminish React by any means, but to me, I'm a mobile developer, and using React does not feel like doing mobile development. It feels like I'm using a tool to get that kind of efficiency of an app that runs across all the platforms. Whereas Flutter is, I feel like I'm in my element. I feel like I'm doing mobile development. So it's enjoyable to me, and I feel efficient. I feel like I can solve all the problems I need to solve, and they're not that different than if I'm writing in, say, Kotlin or Swift. Dart is different, but it's not a huge jump, I don't think, for people. And other people have kind of said that to me as well, that they don't find that big of an issue switching between Dart. I actually find a bigger issue switching back and forth between the IDEs than I do the languages.
Hey, Jason,
Yeah.
that link you were thinking about is in the chat.
Thank you.
It's the Medium article, right?
Yes.
Yeah, it's in the chat.
Okay, great. Thank you. So here's some examples. I kind of try and track these. You don't know right now all the Flutter apps that are out there. I think React's been out there a while, so there are some big names that are known that are using React. Flutter is still, there's a lot more on both of these lists, so there's not a huge brand name on Flutter yet. There's a real interesting article that just came out by realtor.com. You can look that up, of who's taken their native app and starting to move it to Flutter, kind of a screen at a time. So that's interesting. Then you have, the examples, I think, big one of Airbnb, of course, that has outgrown React and went back to native. So I think both of these, I think Flutter is growing, and we'll start to see a lot more apps start to use it. And I don't see React going anywhere anytime soon. But as far as Bottle Rocket is concerned, I have kind of been tracking Flutter in terms of a checklist of what are all the features we do in Bottle Rocket, and could we do them in Flutter? And generally, that I've been able to check all those boxes until, except for Lottie. Lottie was kind of that last holdout. And let me just switch to Lottie here for a second. I don't know how many of you are familiar with Lottie, but this is a technology that allows designers to develop animations. A lot of ours use Adobe in After Effects and their design tools, and generate a JSON file for the animation. Lottie has an SDK that acts like a player and can play these animations. This Lottie file site, you can kind of go through and just find all kinds of animations on your own, if you don't have your own designer. That's what I did for this demo. I just went and grabbed one of these. but there are all kinds of animations that people use for various effects, but we will use them for button effects, transitions, kind of just a little bit of glitter on user actions. So it's something we use frequently to add to the user experience in BottleRocket. So not having that in Flutter has kind of been a block to me to say we could use that in one of our own apps to give the type of premium experience we desire for our customers. And but I keep checking, and just recently they did put out a Flutter solution. So I think it came out in about October. If you look at that performance slide, Lottie does not do a good job versus React. So the React implementation of of Lottie is a little more mature. So that's kind of one of those things to watch out for. Just because the platform is performant doesn't mean the implementation of a specific package is going to be. Let me swap back here. All right. So let's look at Lottie splash screen in Flutter. So it's pretty easy. I just want to put up, this is kind of the basic events and states. What I'm going to show you uses the block pattern in Flutter. So that's kind of what we model our apps on, if you're familiar with that. It's one of the design patterns in Flutter. It's one that we like a lot, which basically separates your UI and your model into states and events. So kind of this is a typical application launch, right? So here's your states. You have a launch state, you start an animation, you're in a splash animation state. In the background, you're preparing your application. So loading data, and at some point you're ready and you move on. So that's kind of what the app or this demonstration I'm going to show does. This is the Lottie file I grabbed. So, you can kind of go to this link, and I'm going to switch to sharing my desktop here so you can see everything. So here's the file on the web, and if you pick up one of these files you want to use, Lottie Files has this download JSON button. So I've just downloaded that file, put it into my app. Roll a second to zoom in on this if you want to. Again, I'm not going to try and teach the code as much as just show how it's used and what the actual flow of this is. So can everyone see that okay? Yep, David?
Yeah, quick question on this. Is just JSON. Does it come with the like images and everything so it works offline, or does it have to be connected to the internet to work?
It has everything is in the JSON file.
Oh, even the binary? Is it like base 64 encoded or something? Or
the vector drawing instructions are in the JSON for the graphics.
Oh, okay. Sorry, my bad. Thank you.
Yeah. So that is one of the pros of Lottie. Is it the format that they have for it is you end up with a much smaller file than if you did the same thing in a GIF. So it's an efficient way to encode animations. So I am going to got an Android and an iPhone emulator here.
There's a question, Jason.
Yep.
Hi, Jason. Now this part is very interesting. I understand that it's an overview, but I believe to check for understanding, are you saying like this? I think this kind of familiar, but are you saying like these? You mentioned JavaScript, right?
Yep.
So are those like if you are a developer, or beginner, however, is that are those like not fillers, but are those in particular someone has to purchase to have access to them to develop or something maybe?
So that Lottie Files site has free animations as well as ones that you pay for.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
And there also is a little tool that you can tweak them a little bit, like change the background, and it'll generate a new file for you. And just so there's no confusion, what Flutter itself is in the Dart programming language and not JavaScript. So the code I have here is Dart. So this is the main file of my application. Just going to show you real quick. What it does is it fetches, basically, it makes a call out to the Astronomy Picture of the Day API and grabs that data element, and then it creates the app. So I've got this network fetch going off in the background, and then I've got this Lottie splash asset. So this ny-splash JSON, this is the file I downloaded. I made it as an asset in my Flutter application. And I've got this condition I've added, which is just it's gonna run the splash 3 times. Basically, I've got this count. I've got this condition commented out right now, but this is normally what you would have. You know, you would want to run your splash until you've got your data. And this data is so simple, it pretty much fetches immediately. I'm going to go ahead and run this just so you can see what it does. So we're going to see that splash animation run 3 times. And then I'm going to kind of walk you through the kind of state changes that you would typically do in a splash animation in an app. Hopefully this animation will show okay on the Zoom. So there we go. It's I did this back in January, so it's kind of a 2021 Happy New Year animation. I'll show you this this condition here. I've got it, you know, it's just counting up 3 times, and once it does 3, it's gonna move on, and we'll kind of walk through the state changes here. I've set some breakpoints to kind of walk through the main steps. So I just ran the app that time. Now I'm going to through it with breakpoints. I'm going to switch to the iPhone now. So I've got iPhone 12 simulator here just so we can see that, yeah, this is cross-platform. I'm going to run it with breakpoints just so we can see, I can kind of walk you through the logic. This was one of the amazing things to me about Flutter was how easy it was to just go back and forth between iPhone simulator and an Android emulator, and the fact that I could just stay here in Android Studio and swap between these things. It's really is an enjoyable developer experience. Now, a lot of our Flutter developers will actually prefer VS Code as their IDE for Flutter development. I've already got Xcode and Android Studio. I didn't want to mess with learning a third one, so I just stick with Android Studio. All right, so we hit our first breakpoint here. So we're fetching our network data in the background, and then we're hitting this create app call. did that wrong. I've got my IDE zoomed out too high. I pressed the wrong button. It's starting over. 1 second, sorry. While we're waiting for that to catch up, I'm gonna. What is the familiarity in the audience with Flutter? So everyone just kind of raise a hand if they have done some development with Flutter or played around with it before. See, David has. Okay, good. So we have some familiarity there. So I think probably what is going to be of most interest here is going to be the Lottie aspect. So I'm going to jump into that here in a second.
You know, putting Redux with it really is beautiful.
I have not done that yet. That is on my list. I keep a running list of things. Oh, I should try this.
Oh, it's just such remarkable.
Started it twice. That's why you're seeing it run twice there. So when I do the create app, this is my block pattern here. So I've gotten a very simple init block, which when the app runs, it creates this init block, which adds a start animated splash event, which then moves the state to the splash state. So we pass the state data in the state. So I've got the Lottie asset and the condition in there. And then when it completes, it's going to be looking for this. I don't have the event called out here, but the only other event is the completion event, and that moves it to the done state in that diagram you saw before. So if we look at, I'm going to go to the init view. So the view you kind of see there is this launch init. So this is just kind of a blank screen that you see before the splash starts. Once the splash starts, I've got a scaffold here with the Lottie widget. So I like to wrap any stateful widgets, kind of keep the state with the nearest containing widget. So everything else can remain stateless as much as possible. So all these elements are stateless widgets except for the one that contains a Lottie. So I'll show you why here in a second. And then once the block is complete, it jumps back into the main application, which then shows this, has the data available and shows this little list element here. But let's look at the Lottie widget. So you can find, if you just go to pubdev, which is the repository for the Flutter third-party packages, and search on Lottie, you'll find a nice example to how to code a Lottie widget. And I've done more than is absolutely necessary. I have put it in a stateful widget with an animation controller, which allows me to basically control that looping. So I load the asset down here, in the build. This loads the asset. So I'm loading it from a file. You can also load it from a network, I believe. Once it's loaded, it's going to call this onloaded callback, and I'm going to run the animation. So I've just wrapped that animation function with my animation controller. So the Lottie widgets support an animation controller, so I can control them with the standard Flutter animation controller. And here I'm basically running the animation from time 0 until it's complete. When the animation is complete, I test my condition, which is basically looking to see if that counter has hit 3, or ideally if my data is available. And if it's not, I run the animation again. And then once that condition is complete, I call this onComplete. And that can basically kicks my app forward. So at a high level, that is all there is to running a Lottie splash animation. So you can add some really effective pizzazz to your app by finding a nice animation and just wrapping it in a stateful widget on the animation controller. So this Lottie asset loads.
Jason, are you there? I'm not hearing Jason.
Me neither.
Yeah, it looks frozen.
Yeah.
Oh no. But it looks like his screen is still sharing.
If you're there, Jason, change your tab. I was wondering while he's not there, I had another question was if anyone knows this, in the actual YAML file in there, it's just you include this this package and that's it? Or then you have to put a reference to that Lottie file, the JSON, or how does it get loaded? I didn't see that in the code enough. I guess I was trying to look at it. I just didn't see it.
It's a good question. I do not know.
Oh,
Me neither.
actually, I think I can answer that one. So with the way that the Lottie file is loaded, it would be like any other asset. So what you would need to do is you would need to add, I forgot what the keyword was, because there's a specific keyword you use in your .yaml.
Yeah, where you put it in the assets. You have to define where your assets are.
Yeah, you would
Yeah.
put it within that directory. I
Okay.
assume that Hire did it like from the beginning. So if he ends up hosting that code to GitHub, you'll most likely see it there in that pubsec.yaml.
Yeah, it's that shared way of knowing where your assets get put in Flutter, I guess. So it's the same way. Okay, cool.
Yeah, because so to break down what exactly that does, for I guess the people that don't necessarily know it, is when you generate your file, or at least you do like Flutter create, so you go into the build to emulator mode or build to device mode. Essentially, it'll take each reference within that directory, and then link it to your iOS, your Android, and whatever other executables there are. I'm not necessarily sure how exactly it'll work with Fuchsia, but just the two main ones. That's how I know it kind of works.
Sorry
Cool.
about that, everybody. I lost my internet connection there. Luckily, it was not in the middle.
Jason, is there a way? So what I asked when you're off, and it was answered a little bit, but could you share how you set up the referencing that JSON file and the include in the YAML, how it works?
Yes. Let me.
Or are you sharing? Will you share this on GitHub, or is it? Or
It is not yet.
okay.
I'm kind of going through the open source steps. Let me. But the PubDev package for Lottie has a really good example. Let me just let me get my sharing up here 1 second. Sorry.
Or if you want to just say it, like I know that I don't know who was talking, explain like it's in, you just put it in the assets directory in the YAML, you make sure it's in there, but I don't.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was Ryan.
Yeah, Ryan. Sorry, Ryan, I didn't see your name.
Yeah. So here's my
It's okay.
here's my project. If I look in the assets directory, I've got an image version too if I want to do an image splash screen. But I've got my Lottie asset in here. And if I look at my pub spec, you will see the assets, and here's my Lottie file right there. So
Cool.
you add it to your application just like you would an image or any other type of resource asset.
Yeah,
And
very
then how does it load? Like on the main.dart, does it load there somewhere or?
The Lottie package. So if you were, oops, I've wrapped that 1 second. So I'm using a framework for kind of a common code that everyone would use. So that's what I've got. Let me jump down into Lottie handles the loading. So there is this Lottie.asset method. I'm passing it, this is just a string. So I pass it the string, and the Lottie package loads the asset. So let's look at the pub spec here. I have included, oops, sorry, it's the wrong one. I'm sorry, well, I don't have that handy.
Well, I can look at the one in the on the open source or whatever you said their prod.
Yeah, it's Lottie for Flutter, and it'll kind of walk you through what you need to do. But basically, this asset method just takes a file name string. So if we remember what we did it back up here, I passed in the, oops, up here. I pass in the file name. So it's just assets Lottie, and there's the file, and that matches what is in my pub spec, assets Lottie file name. So that Lottie component will load the asset, and you can play it through that Lottie component as well. Any other questions?
Sorry, Jason, I do.
Yep.
So, another interesting thing that I find about this was originally my perception was like going line by line, like if there's 3,000 lines or something, but it looks like here with Lottie, as I can infer that necessarily don't go line by line, it's kind of like I guess like the assets are kind of like already there, if I'm correctly speaking, and then you kind of go in there and kind of do a little bit of intake in there, I guess, or input.
It's kind of, you can think about it like playing an audio file or playing a video file. And Lottie is like a player. So it knows how to play the file. So you can look at what this file looks like. It's not readable, but this is what I was saying earlier, David, is it contains actually all the vector instructions to draw the animation. So this is the Lottie JSON. You can see that this one was probably constructed with Adobe tools. But the Lottie widget, so I'm going to call it a widget, everything in Flutter is a widget, knows how to read this file and play it just like you would play an MP3 audio file, MPEG-4 video. I'm dating myself by using older file standards, but
There's MP3s now? I was listening to MP2s. Or MPGs, audio files. MPEG-2? Is that what you're talking about? MPEG-2?
excellent. Yeah. So you can think of Lottie as like just another a player for a different format, and this is just an animation format. But it's not necessarily for the splash. I'm doing it full screen, but you could do it in a button. You could animate a button size, so it could be any size component on your screen. You can have a Lottie effect associated with, and frequently we will do it around smaller components versus a splash.
Okay. I originally, if I should speak respectfully, my analysis, I'm glad to, like I said, to have joined you guys, and I'll continuously. But I thought it was something like, my perception was like, you have to remember like dash and things, things of that sort, you know. So that's pretty interesting. But thanks. Let me just get this right here and do that.
I will leave you all with a few of my favorite Flutter resources. I think, of course, the Flutter documentation is very good. But between these 3 sites, I think probably you could pretty easily find examples and components to build a full app. The community in Flutter is really good, so, and very active. Lots of people putting lots of stuff out there. So these are kind of 3 sites that I think you can probably, between them, figure out everything you need to know.
That was a great talk.
Thank you
Thank
all
you
for
so
having
much.
me. Thanks for your
That was
questions.
awesome. You can't tell I'm a big proponent of Flutter. So
Good.
but I've not used Lottie, so that was really cool.
Yeah, Lottie's
So-
awesome.
And
Yeah.
I wanted to give you guys were talking about age. I just needed to share because just this week I said something about an older version of JDK in the year, and one of the developers came to me and said, I was 3 years old. And I was like, oh, I was not a happy camper.
Thank you, Jason. That was really good.
Yep.
And yeah, Lottie animations are definitely something if you do any sort of mobile development, web development, like it's definitely becoming a standard I'm seeing more around. And I don't know where it falls on that graph of like popularity, if it's become its own thing, but I know that a lot of the visual designers at Bottle Rocket, at least, they really like it, and the tools that they have are supporting it better to create Lottie animations. And so, like you said, when Adobe tools are basically making it where you can export as a Lottie animation, they makes it very accessible to a lot of designers. So even if you're maybe not, even if you're not necessarily interested in Lottie on Flutter, like Lottie in general is great to use and to kind of understand a little bit more about it. So thank you for providing some of those overviews of just kind of how that works. And yeah, it's all vector graphics, so there's no, so it can scale very well. It's, it's not, it scales up, it scales down, very clean at any resolution, which is really nice to just have like an animated vector graphic that actually, a format that actually caught on, as opposed to some, like the SVG, I think was always kind of like what they were shooting for. And I think it is supported, but like an animated version of that.
Yeah, because isn't it like, if you're going to do this like with an animated GIF or something like that, you'd have to have different sizes, correct? If I was right.
To be optimized, yeah, because you're either going to be loading a huge animated GIF into something small, or a very tiny one into something big, and it's going to look weird. And so this is great because you can basically tell it 50 pixels, 80 pixels, 3000 pixels, and it'll all basically look, clean. Obviously, the bigger it gets, if you're real close, it may not hold up, but you can use it on any screen size, and you really don't have to worry about it. So I think, yeah, it provides a lot of benefits. Thanks everybody for coming.
Yep. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Jason. I learned a ton today.
Awesome. Glad to hear it.
On this piece, because